in the process. So the sight shuts down very early in the process as the life thread is being withdrawn. Here I need to say that hearing, touch and sight are the main senses, the major senses. Taste and smell are subsidiary to the sense of touch. Okay, so sight will shut down very early in the process of death, followed by touch, and then last hearing. And the hearing, touch and sight are the most important senses because they are allied to each of the three logoi, third, second and first logoi respectively. Now remember that the dying person is fully aware of his environment, but he is unable to respond. So therefore he can still hear and feel, but he won't see, because that's the first sense that will go. Does the order in which the senses close down relate to the physical plane on which the senses is located? So although decay doesn't give any specific instructions in that regard, but it would appear that the order is sight, being the last major sense to be developed, corresponding to the mental plane. Touch would be the second being the second to be developed, being on the astral plane, and hearing being the first to be developed. How long, therefore, before death does the sense of touch close down? Again, no info on that question. However, there's no reason to believe that the sense of touch would shut off if the person is still alive, because the soul is still receiving info from its surroundings through his senses, because that's how the soul receives information. It's through sight, smell, hearing, etc. But the person is unresponsive because the life and the consciousness is turned inward, no longer outwards to the outside stimuli. And therefore, the person would still be able to feel being touched, even though the person won't be able to respond. Just like they can hear, but they can't respond because the attention is drawn within. So the speech is no longer there. Question 3. What are the hormones or other substances that enter the bloodstream to help the body prepare for death? What parts of the body do they affect, and how and in what order? Now, the only reference regarding substance being released at death is the one below. There's no other information. However, if we analyze that paragraph, we get a lot of information. So let's see. The glands, in response to the call of death, inject into the bloodstream a substance which in turn affects the heart. There, the life thread is anchored, and the substance in the blood is regarded as death-dealing and is one of the basic causes of coma and of loss of consciousness. So that last statement gives us a clue. The thread of consciousness is anchored in the head chakra. And the soul, when it sounds its word call of withdrawal from his own plane, the call is registered by the head chakra because the head chakra is the seat of the soul. And the head chakra transmits ray 1. Ray 1 is the ray of the destroyer. So the life aspect or the will of the soul is discharged then from the soul and registered by the head chakra. Now there's the interesting thing. According to science, the pineal gland was proposed as the source of DMT in the brain. DMT, whatever that spells like, dimethyltryptamine, it was coined the spirit molecule by a certain Dr. Strassman, who says that it is a hallucinogenic compound produced by the pineal gland. Now, according to his research, DMT is released in significant concentration during the dying process. And science believe that it's this DMT that is the cause of all these things that people experience. They call it hallucinations that the dying person experiences during death. So whether they are hallucinations is a different matter, isn't it? So could DMT then be the substance that's being referred to here by DK, released at death? We don't know. But DK doesn't give the name of the gland. But we know that the thread of life is anchored in the heart, and that life principle is there. So from the heart center, then the energy of the soul is distributed to all the chakras, whether it's the 7 major chakra, the 21 minor chakras, or the 49 lesser chakras, and the thousands and thousands of little minute chakras that are around in the etheric body. So it's from there that it pervades the entire physical body, through the body, through the medium of the bloodstream. Now we know that the head chakra is very closely related to the base of the spine. Head chakra registers ray 1, base chakra registers ray 7. So ray 1 and ray 7 are really closely related. And that's where the will to live, in the base chakra that's where the will to live is seated. So therefore you would think that from the head chakra, then via the heart center, then first goes straight down to the base chakra where the will to live is seated, and therefore that will to live goes or is withdrawn. So what parts of the body do they affect? How and in what order? So let's have a look. So when the soul sounds its note of withdrawal, the head chakra responds. The thread of consciousness withdraws, resulting in the loss of consciousness. The life thread being anchored in the head is also affected. Because don't forget, the life thread is connected, is anchored in the heart, but is connected with the head chakra. So head and heart are really closely related. So therefore the heart chakra would be affected. The substance is released and distributed via the bloodstream. Then the life aspect is withdrawn from the base chakra, where the will to live is anchored, and then the heart chakra gathers the life aspect from all the chakras, which then that life aspect is then gathered around the appropriate exit. And it's the solar plexus for the undeveloped, the children, infants, astrally polarized, the heart center for aspirants, well-meaning people of goodwill, and the head chakra for disciples, the mental types, and the initiates. Question 4. When someone is preparing to die, the feet often become discolored or a darker color. Is that the process, part of the process of the circulatory system shutting down? Yep, absolutely, quite right, because then the circulatory system slows down as well, because the life force is withdrawn, the heart has stopped. is slowing down before stopping altogether. The life force is withdrawn from all the extremities and therefore leaving the extremities lifeless and devoid of oxygen, and therefore obviously the feet uh, become discolored. It's just part and parcel of the dying process. How can we help our loved ones during the dying process? Sound, music, human voice, color, fragrance, other? Is it better to talk to them, or does talking to them distract them from pulling together the energy they need to die? Is there anything that we can do to help them gather the energy they need? Okay. DK gives quite a lengthy instructions about that. First, silence in the dying chamber, which is normal, and that happens automatically. I think people just respect the person dying. Color, DK recommends orange lights, only orange lights to be permitted. Why orange? Because orange focuses in the head, but also because orange is the color of the mental plane, and orange, the color orange, dissipates, separates, breaks down, so it helps the etheric body to be separated from the physical body. So that's why DK recommends only orange lights to help the etheric body to be separated from the physical body. Certain types of music. There is no music as yet, DK says, which will facilitate the work of the soul in abstracting itself from the body. But at my sister's death, we played very, very soft and very comforting music, and that, I'm sure, was a great help to her. Mantric phrases. I know that the Catholic religion do this. Again, at my sister-in-law's death only 2 months ago, they kept on saying things such as, Lord, receive our sister, blah, blah, blah. And that's exactly what DK says here. Lord, let thy servant depart in peace. So if that person believes in a religion of some sort that do have these rituals, by all means bring them in, because it's definitely being built into the consciousness of the dying person, remembering that hearing is the last sense to go. So the person will be hearing all these and will be able to be helped through these very comforting phrases. The steady use of the sacred Om, chanted on a particular key to which the dying man will be found to respond. What DK means here, it's that it's the key of the soul, the sound, the ray of the note of the ray of the soul. And that's very difficult, as you know. Sometimes we don't even know what our soul ray is, let alone somebody who's dying. But there are many recordings of the sacred sound, so that if the person can respond or is an occult student or of the ageless wisdom, by all means put the sacred sound on. Anointing with oil, as preserved in the Catholic Church, the extreme unction has a scientific basis. Unfortunately, I can't give you any explanation for that because I don't know what the scientific basis is. The top of the head of the dying man should be symbolically pointing towards the east, and the feet and hands should be crossed. That is usually the case. Definitely the hands, but I don't know of any significance of the feet being crossed. And now I'm going to ask you, because I'm sure that a lot of you have got a lot of experience in that field. Does anybody know why DK recommends the feet? I know that there are two minor chakras in the feet, and they are ruled or governed by the base chakra. So whether crossing the feet sort of in a way shuts off these chakras, these minor chakras, I don't know. Does anybody else have got any idea?
I don't see any hands raised.
No? Well,
Oh,
sorry.
from Diana.
Yeah, go ahead, Diana.
I'll ask you to unmute.
Hi. Well, in Synergetic, this is another therapy. We usually use to cross visually the hands and the feet of the patients because they are related with the left and right side of the brain.
Right.
So we do that for this reason. So that, for example, if the person has some problem or some trouble in the left side of the body, we focus on the right side of the brain and vice versa.
Right.
So I don't know, because we have in the brain, in the nervous system, we have some kind of X.
Yes, they
Yes,
do cross. Yes, of course.
yes,
Yes.
and this is the command for the rest of the body. So maybe there's something for that area. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
I
not my
don't know
idea.
either.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Then sandalwood, the incense sandalwood, to be burnt, because sandalwood is the incense of the first ray. So you can see everything is helping the soul to withdraw all these hints. But talking to the patient and reassuring him in very quiet conversation of these rules below can be useful, making these ideas very accessible to the patient, and of course using the language that the person would understand. While my sister was dying, I didn't use these words, but I explained to her the process of what she would be going through, and that I told her that there would be light at the end of that tunnel. Because at one stage she said to me, "Oh, Nicole, help me, help my soul, help my soul. It's dark in here." And I realized that she was going through the equivalent of the birth canal. And so I kept talking to her and said, "Don't worry, soon you'll be out of that, and you will see light, you will see mom, you will see dad, and my brothers and who had passed away already." And giving them this reassurance, because again, don't forget, they are hearing what you're saying. So these words are very comforting for them, because they know that they are being accompanied, they know that they are being supported, and also telling them where they are going gives them also an idea of what will be happening. So I found that very comforting.
Nicole, there were two comments that relate to the earlier question about
Yeah.
crossing of the feet.
Yep. Yeah.
Both
Okay.
Jerry and Louise express the same idea. The crossing the feet and the hands creates more of a boundary for the vital energy to be limited within the etheric body and not exchanging energy that would support life. Thank you, Jerry and Louise.
Right. Oh, thank you, guys.
Can I
And there
say
was a
something?
question.
Yeah. Please go, guys. This is an
I would,
interactive
yes,
session.
I have never been practicing the crossing of the feet and hands because um, many of those that I have been with have thought it was some kind of, religious something that they didn't want to be part of. But I was thinking crossing the feet. You have it when you do esoteric healing. You have a triangle from the sacral center to the hips, the knees, and the feet, balancing your um, uh, your whole walking on earth. And from the sacral center, you have triangles from sacral center to base and to throat center and to head center. So I have been thinking during this that it might be some kind of aligning the whole system. Do you understand? I don't know. Just a thought.
That would make sense. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, because they are definitely related to the base.
Yes.
Hmm.
Well, I don't
Thank
know.
you.
I never used that, but
Yeah.
might be an explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, they're all very good tips. Thank you, everyone.
There's a
Guys.
comment. Marty adds that uh, it's a really good comment in terms of there was an indication of the Christian faith as the Crusades were involved in. The knights they used the representation on the tombs of the crossed legs. Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marty.
Well, I'm back again. Well, the Buddhistic or Hinduistic ways of burying people or burning them, they also cross the feet and the hands. When you see them on these, kind of boats floating in the rivers. So it might go very back and more deep than Christianity.
Yes. Oh, yes. Even earlier than that. You're quite right.
Yes.
Susie postulates that it may have something to do with the uniting of the three threads, the Ida Pingala in the Sushumna. And Tara says maybe it also relates to mounting one of the crosses, depending on which initiation is being taken. And Janet says you may want to check with medical personnel. If a person is not going to be cremated, the physician or the morgue may want the body to be straight, no crossing for their procedures. That's another interesting thought. Thank you, Janet.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for these tips. So, yes, I'd like this session to be quite interactive, guys, because I know that a lot of you have got experience a lot of experience within our group. So it would be great if we could share from time to time our experiences. So
if you raise your hand, it's easier for us to have you
yeah, to
unmute.
know.
Yeah, and to know you have something to share. Thank you.
Yeah. Because there are a lot of questions, guys, so that's why I'm going through them. Otherwise, we won't finish. But please put your hand up and let's share our experiences. Okay, next one. What's this? I can't even see that. Drugs. I think it's about drugs. That's right. Would you talk about drugs that are given to people that are dying in hospitals and nursing homes? The drugs are said to be for pain reduction. Do the medical professionals really know if that dying person is in pain, or are they drugs intended to immobilize or quiet the dying person for the comfort of the living people? Well, that's not really my area of expertise, but again, I can speak from experience. Some patients in palliative care experience pain, and I know that my sister-in-law 2 months ago, she was experiencing pain, so she was given morphine. Breathlessness, I can understand. I don't have any experience with that, but I can understand why they are breathless, because the life force is being withdrawn from the lungs as well. Vomiting, my sister experienced that. Or some are agitated and don't want to die, and this I really experienced that with my brother-in-law. For nearly 30 hours he had his eyes open and he was panting. 30 hours of panting, and the eyes were completely glassy and there was no life there. So then he was given all these people were given medication, and I know that I don't think that it's intending to immobilize them or anything, but it's just to make them more comfortable and make the transition a lot smoother. Now, are there any medical staff amongst us? Can they? Oh, great, Louise. Can you deny or these
I think
thoughts?
I think the medication, it's a little bit like taking something like a little bit of alcohol to let you slip into sleep. It just lets the awareness slip away from the outside world and turn inward, and it just allows you to drift off. I mean, death and sleep are analogous, are the same in a way.
Absolutely.
So it just numbs. It just lets the consciousness shift to that next level.
So you reckon that it's only because of that reason, not because of pain?
Well, pain holds you. Pain holds people awake. So it's that same thing.
Right.
Pain wakes you up. And it doesn't have to be a large dose often a very small dose of morphine, and the person who's just about ready to die just lets them slip inwards. So that's my thoughts on it. I think it just allows you to slip into sleep. Just think of it as sleep, except in this time it's death.
Yeah. Thanks, Louise.
Janet and then Martine. They both raised their hands as medical folks. Go ahead, Janet.
I've been a hospice nurse, but I haven't practiced since 2000. But you give various medications for what the person is experiencing so that they can alleviate those symptoms for them. The agitation, that also the glands, they usually need some kind of secretion enhancement. It just depends on, the process of whatever disease they're dying from.
Right.
What you give. And I was a hospice nurse, and that's hospice care is to give the best care at death.
Right. Yes.
So that's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Martine?
Yes, I'm not from the medical field, but I wanted to share an experience I had with my father at the moment of death. He experiences the shivering. I think DK speaks about that there is something like a current going through the whole body. And it was not as you told Nicole with your brother-in-law. It was something. My father was calm, but the body simply shivers by itself.
Right.
And after I put my right hand, I think, on his body, and he became quieter, and after the
Right.
shivering stops. But I think that's because the physical, the person was still attached to the physical plane, I think. It was a personal experience I wanted to share with you all.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yes, so you can see that that sense of touch is very calming, very reassuring. Great. Thank you, Martine.
Okay, can I comment on this?
Yes, go for it.
Yes, I think it is at the point where the etheric body is kind of leaving the physical body that gives sometimes some disturbances in the, or whatever you would call it, in the physical body, so that while the etheric body sort of leaves out through whatever the heart or head, it makes some reactions, and it's all. I think that it's mostly because that the person is not really ready to go. So it's a kind of blockage in the physical body.
Yes. Yes.
I just asked the hand to rise when to speak. Where's that?
It's in reactions. It's in that little smiley thing, reactions.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay, Yuki. Okay. All right.
Nicole, I'll just say one more thing
Yeah.
about that. There's a use of medications in the period prior to death, and there's all sorts of different things that are used to make people comfortable. But when that person actually goes into the final dying process, it's just, that was when I was speaking of using drugs in that context.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prior to that, yes, you use it for pain relief and all sorts of things, but
Right.
they haven't actually entered the dying phase, the actual dying process at that stage. Yeah. Anyway.
Thanks for clarifying that, Louise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I suppose as a bystander, well, you don't know what these professionals are giving them, but you can see the difference in the effect after they've given them the drugs or whatever, the pain or whatever. Great.
It helps.
Yes.
It helps. The idea is to facilitate death, so it doesn't really matter what you give to a degree.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't think that, it was something cynical.
No.
Okay. Next one is on suicide. What are the immediate effects of suicide? How does it affect the process between incarnations? Does it affect the next lifetime? And does suicide affect multiple future lifetime? Again, DK doesn't give any information regarding these questions. But we know that suicide interferes with the purpose of the soul for that particular lifetime. So therefore the law of karma would have to be imposed somehow. Now, in what way? Well, no one knows. The individual at that time is swamped in a bog of glamour and despair and hopelessness, and this astral force is so dominant that it actually offsets the inherent instinct of self-preservation. And the soul, if there's any contact at all, just cannot get through that astral whirlpool. So what's the process? What's the effect in the process between incarnations? Well, if the man after death, as DK tells us, is even more aware of his condition, he will find himself in the same astral swamp, unfortunately, and this time even more amplified, and may be stuck on the astral plane until that astral glamour wears off. Hopefully he'll be able to learn from this experience. Now, from my experience, having been part of the Spiritualist Society, oh my God, years and years ago, over 40 years ago, we know that there were groups of discarnates. We used to call them the welcoming party. They were dedicated to help those in need, either children who passed away or those people who passed away accidentally and suicide as well, or in times of war. And so we know that there are, on the other side of the veil, there are people who are there to help those who are passed away. But sometimes if they are, don't forget that they are in their astral body by then, once they've passed away, and DK tells us that, the person is in the consciousness is the same, nothing alters. So if he was in a very agitated, not only agitated, but desperate and hopeless situation before, he would still find himself in the same situation on the other side. There's no escape. So how does it affect the next lifetime or future lifetime? Well, the law of karma will make sure that he will face these issues that he tries to escape in that previous life. And he may choose, though, to bring on conditions, whether it's astrological or whether changing his ray or having a teacher in the next life or parents or family to help him surmount the original astral glamours. But all that person has succeeded to do is lose time, stultify progress, and retard development. Yes, Louise.
Exactly what you're saying. I think it just simply changes the opportunity to continue working at that on the physical plane, because that is where real progress is made. It's still, nothing changes except the opportunity to achieve that goal at that point in time.
Yeah. So then I think that in the next lifetime, because this is a universe of love, so the soul will choose a proper astrological, or surround himself with either teachers or parents who will help that person in the next lifetime to overcome that sensitivity, that extreme sensitivity. Yes, Louise.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put it up.
No.
Yeah. I don't think there's no punishment. It's just simply opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lynn has a comment or question.
It just came to me, going back to the previous situation where there was shivering in on the physical body. Could it be a result of the lack of gravity on the physical body as the etheric body is pulling away from the physical form? Just came to mind the way that astronauts shake when they're in G-force, going out of this Earth system.
Don't know. Could very well be. Or a result of a shock. You know, once the etheric body is being pulled, the body is reacting in shock. And Louise, could you confirm that? That sometimes the body reacts through shivering to shock?
I just trying to think of something through my acupuncture training, but no, I can't give you anything concrete. It's no, I can't. There's something that does happen, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's I can't help.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Chris has Chris, you can unmute.
Yes, Padre Sambhava, in his talk about the stages of withdrawal, he says that one by one as the elements leave, like as the earth element dissolves into water, there's a particular sensation, and each element as it withdraws, fire in particular, the body becomes cold, and as the body is still functioning on certain levels, it would make sense about the shivering.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Okay. Oh no, we've talked about that.
Yeah, you want to go the other direction.
What was
Yeah.
it? It's only 26, 87 people yesterday.
Yeah, you're going
Oh my
back.
God, what am I doing?
Wrong way.
Wrong way, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
here we go.
What's the impact? Oh, that thing is in the way. I can't see. Okay. What's the impact on the soul on these three situations? Accident, violent, suicide. Okay. So we know that because the etheric body is being not whisked away but ripped so violently, and the person finds himself on the astral plane very, very quickly, the period after death, DK tells us, is in ordinary people like a semi-consciousness of a failure to recognize location and total bewilderment. I remember when my mother-in-law passed away, I saw her. She was totally lost. She was in a sort of fog. So I would imagine that also with violent death or suicide or murder, when they are thrown into a new situation, like being in their astral body suddenly, they would be totally lost. And it does take time for them to adjust. So how can we help in these cases? Well, always send love, pure and conditional love, because love, DK tells us, when rightly directed and properly controlled, is the great transmuting agency. And this is why too, in healing, we always send healing to those who have passed away, just so that we can support them, surround them with love, and they will feel that that wave of love coming their way, and they definitely feel supported, and hopefully will bring some light, and they can see their way out. Is there a difference in the step process when it's accidental? No, the process is exactly the same, except that the process of the etheric body being ripped from the physical body is greatly accelerated. So death itself is painless, just like Louise just said before. Well, we don't experience pain when we go to sleep, because sleep and death are, exactly the same process.
Bridget's hand is up, and then
Yes.
Suzanne has a comment, and Tara has a comment.
Right. Okay.
It is, I believe DK says somewhere that if you are coming out of the current lifetime by accident or whatever, you are reincarnating faster than you normally would be, because you have to catch up on the same issues again. And he says that somewhere in, I think it's Cosmic Fire, that soldiers dying in wartime would reincarnate faster, and children dying from sickness or yes, whatever.
We have a section on reincarnation, and we'll talk about that
Okay,
a bit later. Yeah.
okay.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
Yes, I was in reference to a sudden death other than the violent or the murder or suicide. I'm wondering if the same kind of aftermath would apply to someone who has gone from a sudden death such as heart attack rather than a lingering death such as cancer.
Yeah.
If they would also have that confusion and so forth.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
But then again, depending on their level of evolution. So that immediate sense of bewilderment, it's a bit like when you walk into a room full of light, you are blinded for for a couple of seconds. You don't know where you are because you're so blinded. You don't have your bearings. So it's a bit like that. And then once the eyes adjust to the new light, then you can make your way. So it's the same thing for them. But unfortunately for some, as DK says, the mass of ordinary humanity, they feel quite lost because they are so focused on the physical plane that they can't, in their consciousness, there's nothing else but the physical plane. So they will still be looking for their reference points on the physical plane, and of course they won't find it, and no wonder they are lost.
Yes.
Tara does not seem to be able to unmute.
Hi.
Oh, there you
So I was reading esoteric. I've read esoteric astrology, and it talks about the different evolutionary stages of different entities. And I was just putting it together with some of the stuff I know about quantum entanglement, and I'm just wondering if the shivering would be us when we die, us becoming released from that quantum entangled particle, which could have been the entity that initiated and fell into us during an initiation, your third initiation. Yeah, that's what
Well, there are so many explanations, aren't there? So many options, so many ways of looking at it. So yeah, it could be, but I can't comment on that until I see the reference from DK. Then we'll be able to ascertain exactly what he's talking about here. I know that he talks about psychic entanglement, but that's more in terms of consciousness. So I don't know, Tia. But thank you for sharing that thought anyway. So
that was Tara.
Oh, Tara. Okay. So how can we help to dispel some of the myths about deaths and dying and help it to be more accepted by humanity? Well, first of all, sharing our beliefs with others. Now, I had a friend who was very, very good at astrology, and she had worked out the almost to the day that she was going to die. And so she kept on saying, not only to us, but within her own family, she was absolutely joyous. I'm going home, I'm going home. And of course, her family was quite distressed about that. But still, I think it's sharing one's belief. I mean, we don't have to be calling, I'm going home, but we certainly share our belief when we talk with other people. We, as DK suggested, to interject the theme of death whenever the subject comes up, to definitely share our thoughts, using, of course, discretion and tact, because don't forget that not everybody feels the same way. But definitely let's not avoid or evade the topic of death. There's nothing morbid about it, but if we treat it as a normal process of life, then perhaps then we can get through these ideas to other people that, hey, you know, this is a normal process, and we will treat it as a normal process of life. But we can also share books about reincarnation or near-death experiences with those who show readiness and willingness to listen to other points of view. And I remember when my brother died years and years ago, I didn't know DK at the time, but don't know whether you remember Lobsang Rempa. I was into him at the time. Oh, geez, that's a long time ago. And I was also into Raymond Moody. He talks about life after death, which is a result of his extensive research in near-death experiences in the 1950s. So there are lots of books around that you can share with people who are ready to listen. There's also another book called Proof of Heaven by a neurosurgeon called Eben Alexander, and online you can listen to his interviews. There's books also by Anita Moorjani. She gives TED Talks and videos online as well. She's brilliant. Then there's the Netflix series Surviving Death. Then there's the psychiatrist Brian Weiss in his book Many Lives, Many Masters. And that other book of Many Lives, Many Mentions is also very good, by psychologist Gina Seminara. And then, of course, the books on Edgar Cayce is one of the best clairvoyants. And Robert Burrell has also written a compilation called Death, the Great Adventure. And you can also see that on YouTube. So there are lots of books, and but then be careful, because there's a lot of rubbish out there as well, a lot of glamour around. So again, use your common sense and your intuition to be able to separate what's true and what's not true.
If I may,
Yeah.
Proof of Heaven
Yes.
is a wonderful book for
Yes.
the more scientific oriented, or the more someone who has more of a medical base, who wants more proof, to think of this man's story and the fact of his background and who he
Yes.
was. Yeah, it's a very good one to share with people like that.
It is, yes. Yeah. Moorjani may be more accessible, because she was, you know, a very ordinary person on death's door, and she explains the situation that she was in, how sick she was of cancer, and she died and came back to be able to tell her story and what she experienced at the time. She's she's very her language is very, very straightforward, and like you say, Susie, very different to Eben's language.
Thank you. I'll have to check that one out. Mhm,
Yeah, she's very
mhm,
good.
mhm.
Could I
And
comment
also,
on that?
yeah, go for it.
It's yes. Now I'm in Denmark, and we speak Danish, and not many people of the elder generation are very good at English, and that's one dilemma. The other dilemma is that when you're sick, healing a person who is sick with a terminal disease, this person has not got the energy to start reading books
No, of course
in the
not. No,
process.
no, no.
So what you have to find a way to explain how the death process would be if that's the way it's going, and take some discussions with the sick person and the family to explain what is going to happen.
Yeah, very true. Very, very true. Yes. We've got to
Yeah.
speak their language and make
Yes,
it accessible to them.
yes. The worst part is the family.
Oh, yes, I know.
Yeah.
I
So
know.
the sick person is normally can be kind of adjusting to accepting the situation,
Yes.
because the person can feel the body is
Yeah.
getting weaker
Yes.
and weaker, and wants some guidance to pass over, while the family wants to hold him or her back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And my advice, friends, is because I went through it in two members of my family, where the members were very resistant to me talking to the dying person. So I would suggest that you suggest to them that each person goes on their own to say their goodbyes. And that's one bitter lesson that I learned, because my brother-in-law, whom I said to you, nearly 30 hours with his eyes wide open and painting, you could see that he was very, very agitated. And every time my sister-in-law and myself, we would talk about death to him, they would really be very angry at us and didn't want us to talk to him at all. So I learned my lesson. Then when my sister-in-law died 2 months ago, and that's what I suggested to the family, let everybody come on their own and say their goodbyes, and then you can just say whatever you need to say to the
Yes.
person.
Yes. Good advice. I've
Yeah.
had many clients doing healing, because it has been scarce with hospices here in Denmark.
Yeah.
There's been long waiting lists, and some people have been discarded from the hospitals. We can't do anything more for you. Go home and die. And
Yeah.
so I've been called in and been with many people over the last 20 years in the process.
Right. What a
So,
great job you're doing. Because
well, I hope so.
that's exactly what DK says, is that, the healing group
Yeah,
need to, because that's one of our tasks, is to
yeah,
help people transition, and the
yes,
highest form of healing.
yes,
So what you're doing there is really helping other people
yes,
to
yes,
pass on more smoothly and more happily and joyfully.
Yes, mostly the dying person is relaxed
Yeah,
after doing healing. And you said earlier about music and colors and such. I
yeah.
think I don't recall if it is in the DK's healing that you can, if you can find out the ray of the soul of the patient, you
The
can
soul ray,
hum.
no. No, it's very, very difficult. You've got to use your own spiritual perception for that.
Yes, I know.
There's no way of knowing the soul ray of the
No, no,
person.
no, but I've tried that sometime, almost every time, but sometimes I succeeded finding the ray, because you can do it if you tone the note of the ray and hum
Yes.
that during
Ah,
the process. For example, I I don't recall where it comes from, but the ray of humanity is the ray 4, and the tone of ray 4 is G note. So you can use that for every person. But
yes.
the
And
best thing
also,
would be to
you're
find
quite
out.
right.
Yes, but the best part would be to find out the ray of the person, of course.
Yes. And seeing that the soul is intrinsically love, you can also use the note of love,
Yes,
which
yes,
which is the G note actually.
yes, it is. Yes, I know.
Yeah. Yes.
Lynn has a
So
comment, Nicole, and then I just want to remind us that there are 41 slides and we're an hour and 10
yes.
minutes
Oh God.
in.
Sorry,
So
sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Lynn, would you go ahead with your comment?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that there's a term out there now, becoming death doulas, just like there are birth doulas. And
Aha.
many are in that, those particularly who are involved in hospice and as nurses and hospice spiritual advisors. And I think it's a wonderful term to keep in mind of what we can do for people.
Yes. No, that's a great service. So I'm so glad that people are tuning into DK's suggestion, even though they may not be aware of it. Thanks, Lynn. So we can become death doulas. Excellent. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, something else too that I wanted to share with you is just to keep an open, non-judgmental and unbiased mind to the paranormal and to psychics, because they have a very definite role to play. And they are under Master Hilarion, the fifth Ray Master actually, which is really interesting. The fifth Ray Master, Master Hilarion, he controls and transmutes the great active movements which endeavor to strip the veil from the world of the unseen. He impresses the minds of those whose vision will justify his efforts, and he has much to do with the psychical research movements throughout the world. And with the aid of certain groups of angels, he works to open up the world of departed souls to the seeker. So he's doing a lot of work with a Spiritualist Union Society and the psychical research movements in the world. So keep an open mind. When a living person, hang on a sec, when a living person sees the appearance of someone who has died, is it always from the astral? Well, it's most likely from the astral. I felt my grandmother, I was very, very close to my grandmother. And when she passed away years and years ago, one day I was really, really feeling sad. And I was thinking about her, and I could actually feel her hugging me. So definitely it would have to be the astral. There's nothing else. And then my brother, after he passed away, months after he passed away, I was driving and I suddenly felt a presence and I just knew that it was him. He was just sitting in the car next to me. So they would definitely be astral. I can't see anything else. Now, this question is hard to answer. The next one, are these creations of the astral body, or are they the actual person they appear to be? How would one know the difference between a glamour and a real living entity? Well, the real living entity, I would assume, whoever asked the question, Diane, I think, asked these questions, I'm not sure, would have to be the soul. But it's unlikely that it would take an astral body to appear unless it's for a very, very definite purpose. Don't forget that the astral plane is a plane of glamour and distortion. So here we have to use our intuition, whether it's the astral body or whether it's the real person. We don't really know. How will the soul appear to us? I don't know. Yes, Diana. Or Diana.
Well, when my father passed away in 1996, I didn't see him, but I hear him
Yes.
mentally.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have just a moment and somebody's going to pick me to some place and he doesn't know where. And he gave me recommendations about take care of my mom.
Yes.
And he told me that he was visiting his sister in Israel. And he came back to see me and tell me that. And I didn't, I couldn't speak. I didn't say anything. No word. I just took a pencil and a paper and write the words. That's all. And because I am the first person who, I don't believe in myself that maybe it's my own creation.
Yes, your imagination.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, well, nothing. I mean, okay, it was good and that's all, because disappear everything and never more in my life. Okay. But 1 month after that, his sister wrote me and told me that when she was walking in the street, she feels my father near her and she knew that my father passed away.
Yeah, yes.
My father at that time has six sister and brothers, no? So this was a kind of confirmation for me that it was true. And I think that maybe it was his mental activity, because he was a chess master.
Right.
And he works a lot with his mind. And maybe he has this. I mean, I wanted to share that.
Thank you, Diana. Yes, that's very, very true. I had the same experience with my father too. Yeah. But I think the person who asked that question is, are they the actual person or the astral body? Well, that's why it's really difficult to know. Okay, the actual person, the person that we knew on Earth was made up of a mental body, an astral body, and a physical body. Okay, where's the real person? From an occult point of view, the real person is the soul. That's why it's very difficult to answer this particular question. Okay. What's the likely interaction of a disciple or student of the Ageless Wisdom with his ashram after death? Well, okay, if you ask the question about an ashram, well, we assume that if the disciple is in an ashram, he's mentally polarized. In other words, his mental body is reasonably well developed. So while on earth, in his sleeping hours, well, that disciple would have participated in the activities of the ashram. But once on the other side, this environment would be very familiar to him, and therefore he would resume his activities 24 hours, so to speak. So there's nothing new to him. Now, if we look at DK's talks to his disciples, we can also have clues here. In Dina 2, he says, 2 of them passed away in the clear, cold light. They have gone over to the other side, but are still actively cooperating with the group and receiving the same instructions from you. But DK can approach them more directly as the limitations imposed by the physical brain no longer exist. So they are actively cooperating in the ashram. Another one, PDW, being the latest to pass over, was held up by his astral body for an exceedingly brief time. Now, as you know, there is no time on the astral plane, on the other side of the veil. So what does extremely brief time mean? Does that mean 5 minutes? Does that mean 5 days, 5 hours, 5 months? We don't know. But nevertheless, he managed to get rid of or eliminate his astral body within a certain time. CDP, both of them, both CDP and PDW have passed away, and they are both of real service to me at this time of world need. So even though they may be handicapped for a little while, because don't forget they have to go through their second death, and their mental body, they are still in really active in the ashram. Next one. Is every dying person met by loved ones when they are dying? Why is this? Reunion, comfort, escort, or other? Comment, my mother died at home over a period of 1 week and no drugs were given to her. Her consciousness went back and forth between this world and the afterlife. Twice during that week she told us that her mother and father were standing right in the room, although both of her parents died many years ago. Once she named her deceased sister and brother-in-law and said that they were there with her parents. Don't forget what DK said, that after life, after death, the man is not lonely and he finds himself with people with whom he's been connected in a physical life, so he's not alone. And he is in close contact with those that he knows. From my own experience at my mum's death, and I'm sure that you have too, while my mum was dying, I could see my dad pacing up and down the hospital corridor, but my 2 brothers were right there next to her. At my brother's death, the same thing. My brother, Serge, was next to him and I could hear him like Diana heard her father. So definitely their loved ones are next to them. And I'm sure that some of you have experiences of that. Please share if you would like to share that. Okay, so maybe a little bit later. DK writes that Martin. Okay, go ahead, Martin.
Yes, in fact, it was something very strange after my mother's death. She had a very violent death because she fell out of the steps.
Ooh.
And then she didn't realize, I think, for some months, or I don't know, because there is no time behind the veil. And then I was driving once, and she came. I didn't see her, but I felt her very strongly, and she wanted to go with me and have an ice cream, because I was in the neighborhood where we went to have an ice cream. And I said rather firmly, but you can't do that because you are not on the physical plane now. And then it disappeared. She disappeared. I say, I don't know, but it was not physically, of course.
Yeah.
And after I had no more, I wouldn't say problems, but she didn't appear. And
Right.
yes,
Right.
It stopped.
Yeah.
But she wanted strongly to come back, because I think she didn't realize she was yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And DK does say that some of them, don't even realize that they've passed away. I think we mentioned that in our first webinar. Thank you, Martine. So the next question is that a scientific discovery that proves the existence of death, of the existence of the soul, will do a lot to speed this process. Okay, we know that DK tells us that France, which is a Ray 5 soul and a Piscean soul, which transmits Ray 2, and a Leo Ray 5 personality, to France will be given the ultimate glory of proving to the world the fact of the soul and the demonstration of the technique of egoic control. Then true soul psychology will come into being, because Ray 5, as you know, the higher aspect of Ray 5 is the science of the soul, just like the lower is scientific, the concrete science and knowledge, but the higher aspect is the science of the soul. So, yes, I'm looking forward to when France will prove the existence of the soul, and boy, will that be a revolution for all of us. And that will make death a lot easier for people to accept on a global level.
Nicole?
Sorry? Yes?
This is Janet. I was under the belief, because now in hospitals, the bed has the ability to weigh the patient. They have proved that something leads because there's a weight loss when the person.
Right. Jeez.
Just so you know.
Well, they would have to have very, very, very sensitive technology for that. Do you remember in our last webinar, I said that, well, because the soul is substantial, because it is on the mental plane, which is part of the dense body of the Logos. Therefore, according to DK, it has gravity, it has dimensions, it has weight. But he gives a clue, and he says, take the tip of a hair and 1/100th of that hair, and then divide that again by 100th. So can you imagine how subtle that must be? So for the hospitals to have measurements, my, they would have to be extremely sensitive. to measure. But let's hope that they will come to that. Oh, what's happening here? My screen share has paused. Okay. Can you see this slide? DK mentioned dying in one's sleep.
I can, yes.
It says to me your screen sharing is paused.
Huh.
Yeah, by mistake, you will have hit the pause screen share. So you just need to hit it again.
Okay, where's that screen share?
It's
It'll be
the
along
green
the
one.
bar, your control bar.
Control bar. Oh.
It's down at the
Okay.
bottom, Nicole. The green button.
The green button. I see. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why. Anyway, DK mentioned anything about dying in one's sleep? What about under anesthesia, during surgery, or for that matter, under the influence of any drugs or medication? Well, as we said earlier on, death and sleep is the same process, except that in death, both streams are withdrawn. And yes, I've known of actually an esoteric healing student whose husband died in his sleep. So, yep, definitely that it does happen. The consciousness thread is withdrawn at night anyway, but the life thread is still attached. So the soul may have decided to just sever the life thread while away. For what purpose? Well, we don't know. Why did the soul choose to die this way? Well, that's the way I'd like to go. Carol, could you share the experience with your husband, if that's possible? If you're still there?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I am. I'm unmuted. In 2018, my husband had lung cancer surgery. The operation was supposed to go for 3 hours, but after 9.5 hours, he still hadn't returned to the room. So I knew that something was up. After he passed 18 months ago, I read his diaries and he'd written about that experience. So I'd like to share that. And this is what he said. At some time when strung up on the operating table, I became immersed in a soft bottle green light. Whilst medically unconscious, I was in a general sense aware of what was happening around me, but at the same time acutely aware of the paths that lay ahead of me. The path to the temple of eternal peace was attractive compared to the pain of the present. To move along that path was not easy, for the guardian angels of God who were protecting me also protected the steps of the temple and presented a passive resistance to stepping off the edge of life. The green light of the guardian angels, while protecting me, also restrained me like bandages around a mummy. Simultaneously, the green light presented images of life on earth and images of the path to enlightenment. The images of the earthly love of my wife and family were portrayed in the context of eternal love. I chose the temporal love of family to stay, knowing that the experience of eternal love was always there, provided its source of forgiveness was genuinely practiced. The green light of the guardian angels has to be experienced to be appreciated, for the sensations and feelings cannot be described by words. For those of you who are awakening to God, our Creator, the source of life and giver of love and all knowledge, may your quest be purposeful and direct, such that love will be the light that shines upon you and guides you. The greatest act of forgiveness is encapsulated in the words, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." This actually was really powerful in his life as it translated into living for the next 2.5 years in a world that he used to call the land of what really matters. So whenever something came up, it was always put in that context. Is this what really matters? And so he was able to practice that forgiveness. And as a result of that, he died really peacefully, having forgiven a very traumatic early childhood. And he dealt with that with love and forgiveness. And his release at the end was very peaceful. And his last couple of years were very peaceful when he realized this was the way forward.
Very powerful, Carol. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Very, very powerful. These near-death experiences are really life-changing. I remember hearing an interview with Star Wars. What's his name? The guy who wrote Star Wars. He had something to do with his lymphatic system, but mostly around the throat. Oh my God, what's his name again? Anyway, he wrote Star Wars.
George Lucas.
And yes, thank you, Lynn. Yes, yes. And I remember hearing him talk about, he was very, very sick. And he talked about his experience and how powerful and life-changing it was when he came back from his sickness and he was cured, and what he experienced and how it changed his life after that. It was very, very powerful. So thank you very much, Carol. Okay. Reincarnation. When a disciple reincarnates, will he do so with the same family relationship, or is this only for the average people? Now, that's mostly so for the average person, but of course it depends on the individual soul goal and intent for that incarnation. The first seed will determine his future physical environment, the second seed, third seed. What is the meaning of those seeds, and how does it work? Well, basically, the seed means a decision. That's all it means. The soul makes 3 decisions regarding his future bodies. His etheric body, in other words, he decides which body, whether it's mental, so the throat and sacral, or heart and solar plexus. Which chakra will he activate to learn which lesson? Then his physical environment, the country, his parents, and I've put a quote from DK below, that the parents donate only the dense physical body, nothing else, save a body of a particular quality and nature which will provide the needed vehicle of contact with the environment demanded by the incarnating soul. And of course, that is in line with the group relationship, the group soul, the group purpose. And then the third seed is the astral body. Then he chooses what kind of astral body and therefore which chakra that he'll concentrate on. That's basically what that means. What does the term second death actually mean? Second death is the elimination of the astral and the mental body after the person had passed away. And I think I've mentioned that to you earlier on from Dinah when DK is talking about PDW and CDP. And the length of that process varies from case to case depending on the level of evolution of the individual. And what's the fundamental difference in the art of elimination of kamic, kama-manasic, and manasic? Look, guys, we're running out of time. So these are the slides where the explanation is. It's pretty straightforward. The person who has died communicates telepathically if everyone is in harmony. Does this mean that they can contact us even though we're not part of their group? Look, they can communicate with whoever has the inner mechanism developed enough to respond, even those who are not in the same group, just like we can talk to strangers. However, in this particular quote, DK was referring to an advanced disciple who's mentally focused or polarized. It was explained that highly developed people can have a sense of foresight of death and retain the self-determination to continue working until the last instant. Does that mean here and now these people can experience a crisis whereby they can sense death? Is it possible to manage this crisis? Well, there's no crisis for those who are ready and understand the process. And I think I've given you the example of Pat, my friend, in my astrological class, who kept on saying, I'm going home, and she was absolutely exhilarated of the prospect of going home. So for her, there was no crisis. But the emotional crisis experience is leaving loved ones behind and sensing their distress and pain. And that I experienced that myself during training when I work with a gentleman called Ian Gawler here in Australia, where he helps cancer patients to, whether it's dying or bringing them back to health. He experienced cancer himself and survived. He was going to die within 3 months. The doctors had given up hope, and he was very young. He was only in his early 20s at the time, but he survived it. And so we were trained, and that experience that I had during that meditation was exactly that. I was absolutely torn when I sensed the pain of my loved ones, and I'm sure that you would have some experience too around that. For the very experienced disciple, it's accomplishing. They are torn between going and not going because they feel that they haven't finished their work yet. And Michael would have experienced that because he really wanted to keep Michael Robbins, I'm talking about now. I don't know that, but I assume that he would have experienced at some point some form of distress, because I know that he was really wanting to hold on until 2025. He probably felt that his work wasn't finished yet. But the way to manage these crises is to understand that we can't be responsible for the way other people react to circumstances, that the loved ones will experience death, pain at our death, no matter when it comes. So here, detachment is highly recommended. And for the initiate or highly developed disciple, the way to manage this is to believe that the soul knows when it's the best time to leave, and that to let the soul decide when to go and when to stay back. Because the soul knows he may have other purpose within the ashram, other work that needs to be done. So again, detachment is needed. And that's very much like what Christ said on the cross, not my will, but thy will. So does anyone have experience in that area? Okay, you may think of it later on. Now, if it's the soul in its own plane that decides the end of its cycle, once the purpose of that soul has been fulfilled, what happens when there are long illnesses in which one loses consciousness, for example, a prolonged coma or very advanced Alzheimer's? Well, we assume that in these cases, the soul is more or less in control of their vehicle. So we don't know the soul's plan in these cases. Unless we have spiritual perception, there is no way of knowing the soul's agenda. So all we know is that in this particular case, the consciousness thread is no longer there, or there's a lack of connectivity in the brain, but the life thread is still active. For what purpose? Don't know. However, in the cases of those who have not achieved the first initiation, and that's when the soul starts to take interest in its vehicles, then it's the physical elemental which is in control. The soul doesn't take much interest in the life of its vehicles while these vehicles are being developed. After the first initiation, it's when the love petals of the egoic lotus are opening, and that's when the individual starts responding to the soul's love impulse. But otherwise, until then, the vehicles are left to the impact of the law of evolution. So, sorry, don't know. Is the soul purpose being fulfilled there in a body or mind that can no longer act, learn or serve on that plane? Again, we don't know, but we know that the soul always sacrifices itself for a greater purpose. So it could very well be that its purpose is to provide the opportunity to others left on earth to develop either empathy or compassion or selflessness or something. Sometimes you really don't know. Sometimes too the soul waits for the right astrological conditions, which is right for itself, because it needs to continue what it's contributing to earth, or what it's learning, or what the personality is learning. But of course it's always aligned with a group purpose. Again, we don't know. What in the usual world is valued as resource or attitude, in other words desire, etc., is actually a contributing factor to the mirage of the astral plane, yet that seems to be the way to live on this plane. It is complex, but what would be any recommendation for transiting this duality so that in the end the mirage is no longer nurtured? Well, DK recommends to practice harmlessness. And here I've given you a quote, a very, very powerful quote from DK. He says, "I say to you at this time, I, an older and perhaps more experienced worker and disciple in the great vineyard of the world of the Lord, practice harmlessness with zest and understanding, for it is, if truly carried out, is the destroyer of all limitations." That's a very powerful advice there from DK. Now, it is said that we must accompany those who leave. How to do it? We accompany them in consciousness, obviously. We explain to them that they have passed on, and to be aware of those whom they know have already passed on, and to give them the reassurance that he or she will be well looked after and that it's a place of love. So that's a very important aspect, and I think someone mentioned that earlier on while working with a dead or with a dying. And how to guide those who remain? The same thing. We help those who stay behind, that reassuring that their loved one is in a better place of no sickness, and that it's a place of love where they are being looked after and cared for by those who have already passed on. When one dies, it says that one goes to the other plane, which is this one. It is the emotional plane, and that's where the bulk of humanity is polarized and they are very familiar with that state of consciousness. Is there any call or answer from that plane? Now, unless we have developed an inner sense of hearing, touch, or sight, which can allow us to function on that plane, then we can't hear, see, or feel them because our consciousness is too focused on the physical plane. Don't forget that communication is a two-way street, friends. Now, for example, if I use the telephone, well, I can't communicate by phone with you if you don't have a telephone. It's the same process, right? If we don't have the inner, or if we have developed them to a certain extent, then we will hear them at times and not, or see them or feel them at times and not at other times. But we must have developed these inner senses to a certain extent to be able to talk or sense or see those who have passed away. What's the effect of crying or even screaming at the time of death? Oops, okay, Diana or Diane has got her hand up.
Yeah, hi, thank you. On that last slide, I just have a comment. I think we can perhaps help people by letting them know what to expect and what's coming. Like when my mother was dying, she was on her deathbed for many months. So I read a lot of books and I would talk to her those last few days and let her know what I read, like what to expect. Like my one sister was overseas. I said, you can visit Joanne by thinking about her and thinking, and you will be there instantly. There's no time, there's no distance. You know, you can walk again, you'll have good legs, you can get around. And I told her some things like that I read from the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying and other places. And about an hour after she died, I went down to the river. I wanted to be alone, and I was standing at the edge of the river, and it's like someone walked up behind me, and all the hair stood up on the back of my neck, and I turned around because I thought I was alone there. And I hear this voice in my head, how did you know what it would be like? How did you know what this was going to be like? And I'm totally dumbfounded. And I'm like looking up and down the river and I'm by myself. And I just said out loud, well, Mom, I didn't really know. I just told you what I read, you know? So
that's wonderful.
I think maybe we can help them have some expectation of what their functioning might be like at the very beginning when they first pass, to help it be less bewildering for them once they find themselves out of the body.
Absolutely, Diana. It's one of the greatest gifts that we can give to those who are dying. It's the highest form of healing, DK tells us. So good on you for doing all that work and helping your mum. Must have been very, very reassuring for her to know exactly what was coming. Yeah. So our strong emotions make the transition, unfortunately, a lot more difficult and distressing for the dying person. As I was saying to you earlier on, my own experience in that meditation is feeling the distress of those around me. But it does nothing for the dying process, though. Because once the soul has decided, you know, the saying is, once your time is up, your time is up. Screaming and dying really, and crying rather, doesn't seem to help. Would it be right to rejoice at the departure of a loved one? Look, DK tells us that in the future death will be a happy occasion when we will have etheric or astral vision and will be able to see our loved ones and communicate freely with those who have transitioned and know that they are still alive. But unfortunately today, it's not the case. Our personalities are still attached to the physical person. And of course, we can't see them, we can't feel them, we can't hear beyond the physical plane, and we miss their physical presence. And that's what makes us so sad. And also because we don't really understand the process, and we're uncertain of what's beyond too. That's what makes us so it's such a painful experience for us. But of course, we miss them. We are human. We are focused on our physical body, so we want the physical presence of our loved one with us.
Nicole?
Yes?
Sorry, it's Kim here. I could share a story if there's time, but
go
only if
for
there's
it.
time.
Yes, go for it.
So a few years ago, I was in America with my teacher, who's a realized teacher. And it was a 2-week training, and the whole topic of the whole 2 weeks was how to cope with people dying.
Right.
And halfway through the training, I got news that my cat had to be put down. And I know it's a cat, not a person, but they were like my fur babies to me because I don't have children. And anyway, so I was like, okay, so here I'm being given an opportunity to put into action what he's been teaching. And what he'd been teaching was to stay joyful, that there was no need to be sad, that we could stay completely and utterly happy and joyful when other people die. And so I was sitting on my bed as I just heard this news, and I knew I was like at a fork in the path of choice of how I responded and dealt with my cat having dying. And because I wasn't there, I wouldn't be there because I was in America, my cat was here in New Zealand. And and I knew I had this choice to make, and so I trusted my teacher, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try it his way. and I just chose. I mean, obviously we were in a very special energy field, being there at the teaching, so it was much easier. But I chose to stay in love and peace and joy and happiness, whatever words you want to put on it. I'd say I was like 97% successful. And it's hard to describe how I did that, but I did it. And then, a couple of times I some sadness came up, but I was very quickly able to, come back to a place of joy and peace. And then just after my cat had been put down, I was walking outside, and I was meant to be in class, but I just wanted to take some time out. And I was walking along the path, and I bumped into my teacher. and of course I was meant to be in class, and so he asked me, why aren't you in class?
Right.
Somebody else was teaching that class.
Yep.
And I told him what had happened, and all he said was, stay joyful. And it gave me a direct, absolute experience of that this is possible. It really changed my understanding and experience of other people dying. Well, it was a cat, but can be applied to people too.
Yes, absolutely, because there's love in us. Whether we love a cat or we love a human being, it's still love, isn't it? And
well,
we
it's
still
about
miss.
not going into. It's about, because my speciality is dealing with emotions, and it's about not going into the old emotional responses, which are very, very deeply conditioned in us. And it's about tapping into the deeper levels of, as you say, of joy and happiness, and coming from there rather than letting the old, negative emotional responses run us.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we had 2 other people raise their hands.
Tia, would you unmute, please? There you go.
I just wanted to, I know that Michael's transition was the impetus for all of this, so I thought it might be appropriate to share a little bit of a story that people might find perhaps of use, perhaps not, but I will share it anyway. So when we had our last conference, it became very clear to me that Michael was going to be making his transition.
Yeah.
And I felt it very strongly. And I knew that it was something that was sort of chaotic, or he was torn in that regard because he already knew. And so the message came through that it was okay because the ranks, the actual phrase was the ranks would be replenished. And that was the message that he was to have. And so I saw him, intensify his work because he already knew. And then at the moment of withdrawal, this will make you laugh, Nicole. I was in one of your meditations around the time that Michael was withdrawing. And as I was meditating, I was pulled out of meditation, and in the corner of my left eye, my peripheral vision, I saw Michael. And he wasn't in he wasn't in physical form. It was almost like David's substance, but it wasn't complete. It was like it was drawing into that kind of substance. It was light and it was energy. Now, I have been seeing people at their moment of transition since I was a child, but I've never seen them in that form of substance. Usually they come either in their physical persona that they had in life, or a persona that they wish that they would have had in life. I mean, that's how I've seen them. But Michael was very different. His was energetic. And I think that was a testimony to his achievement. The second time I heard him, and it was at the vigil, and it was when they were saying the people's names to be welcomed into the heart. All of a sudden, when Tuya was saying the names, it went quiet, and Michael just started, he's still welcoming people into the Moria Federation and naming them and blessing them and welcoming them into the organization. So he is, in my mind and in my heart, well, I say in my mind, very much alive, because I was not sleeping in either one of these instances. I was very much conscious and very much awake when this was going on. So he was aware. It wasn't a shock. I mean, he prepared for it. But as you said, it's very hard for those that you have to leave behind. And he was very much, I think, wanting to be here for 2025. But as he was withdrawing, his soul was totally surrounded. So you couldn't even see in, and he was being protected. So it was time for him to go, because I think that there were some people who would want to have drawn him back to this side, and that was not being allowed. So I just rejoice that he's still around and he's still very much involved in this work and his other new tasks that he's been assigned.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And he would be very powerful too on the other side.
Yes, he is.
Very, very powerful. Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. It's a very touching testimony. Yes, he was a great teacher, wasn't he? Oh, he is a great teacher. Not he was, he is a great teacher.
Yes, because when I was your meditation, my mind distracted for a moment, thinking I finally need to get around to studying astrology, because Michael so much wanted me to study astrology. And that's when I saw him. So he's still very much teaching.
Yes, yes. Telling us what to do. Yeah, very much so. We had somebody else, Britta had her hand up, I think, too.
Yes, I have 3 things that I would like to add. And now Michael came up. I think, well, maybe not, but don't you think that if you pray a lot or think a lot of a dying person, that you can hold them back from their transition to the higher planes? That's a question. And then I have a question about what you just read here. What DK says, that what you can connect with the dying people or the dead person, where comes in telepathy, clairvoyance. And the third thing I would say is that I have had many visits of people who died. They have been standing by my bed, usually early in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and giving some kind of message or whatever. And yes, that's just an experience I've had many times.
Mm. But Britta, praying for people doesn't mean that you're holding them back. You're sending love. You're sending light. So you're not
Yes,
holding
but
them back.
do they need light when they are?
Oh, yes, they do.
Why?
Well, remember how we said earlier on, they unless they are initiates, well, they are still trying to get rid of their emotional body.
Yes.
Well, they are in the plane of distortion there.
Yes.
So sending them light, that will dissipate some of these illusions.
Okay, but well, the Buddhists say that you are sort of a middle landing on the astral plane for 48 hours, and after that you goes on to whatever ashram you belong to. But of course I know of people that who have died, and they are kind of staying put in their home where they lived because they don't want to leave. And yeah, I don't know.
It all depends on the level of evolution of the person. When you're talking
Yes.
about an ashram, here
Yeah.
you're talking about advanced disciples or disciples.
Yes. But I
Whereas,
think in Michael's case, I think that he would be strong enough to just go forward and not stay put on the astral plane.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But all the other average people, they might have a problem, or we have a problem.
Correct. That's what I said. It all really depends on your own consciousness, your own state of mind, what you know, what you believe in, and how you deal with it on the other side is how you deal with situations here, down here.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Great.
Like the lady from New Zealand, she made a conscious choice of not going back to the old ways of grief, but to move on to joy. So that's a decision that they make, and that's because she's seen the path. There are two ways, and also with Carol's husband's experience as well.
Yes.
He was saying the same thing.
Yes. And sometimes I think that the healing goes both ways, that the departed person heal you as the person who is in mourning.
Yes.
And you heal the person in the transitional journey.
Yeah. Yes, it's always both ways, isn't it?
No.
It's very comforting when we hear them, when we can feel them around us. Then we know. It's when we don't know, that's when the pain is.
Yes,
anyway.
but I told you earlier that I've been working on a professional level with dying patients, and then some of them have come back after their deaths and kind of saying thank you or giving a message to the family or
Yes.
special persons, and
Yeah.
I have delivered that.
Right.
So it's yeah.
No, that's a great service, Britta. Keep doing it. Keep doing it, because it's a very valuable service that we render to humanity by doing
And
that.
that was one thing I was thinking, that DK says in the end of esoteric healing, that in the future you will, to heal people, you will need clairvoyance to see where the disease is. You will need surgeons to operate, and you will need the healers, esoteric healers, to do the rest.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
something to look forward to.
exactly right. I was just about to say something to look forward to in our next future incarnations.
I hope so.
Yes. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The next question was, what's the impact on the deceased of when his loved ones grieve for a long time, such as for years? Well, he would certainly feel his loved one's distress and pain very acutely. As DK said, the experience is far richer and fuller on the other side of the veil. Until he goes through the experience of the second death, when he eliminates his mental body, and then he's no longer himself affected by his grief, or when he's managed to transmute his own grief with detachment. Is it true that the person continues for 48 hours or more with loved ones and touring familiar places? Yeah, I think we've mentioned that earlier on. Yes, DK does say to us that for the average citizen, death is a continuance of a living process in his consciousness, and he just carries on. You know, the lady, Martine, I think, was saying about the ice cream, the mother wanting ice cream, and carrying forward of the interest and tendencies of the life. Their consciousness and is the same, doesn't sense much difference, and he's well taken care of, and he's often unaware that he has passed through the episode of death. So that may explain the belief that our loved one is still around, and that his or her presence can be felt. Is it true that a portal is passed, and that the loved ones or superior beings are waiting? Yes, definitely. They know that they have passed away. I'll just tell you a little incident from my own personal experience. My dad knew 2 years before my brother died that he was going to come, because he in one of my meditations, he said to me, "Tell your mum not to worry about Serge." Serge was my eldest brother, and he was the first one to have passed away. But Dad had already passed away then. So, yes, they know, and therefore they make sure then that they are there when the loved one is passed away. How to prepare for transition. DK gives us a few hints as to how to prepare, and one is to keep focus in the head through visualization and meditation. This is why too we insist that when we do the healing, we always keep focused in the head. 2, when dealing with others, deal with the heart, use the heart center. That helps the energies to be transmuted to the energy of the solar plexus to be transmuted to the heart. Make a practice every night to withdraw the consciousness to the head as you go to sleep, and practice this for many, many years. And then record any phenomenon with a drawing process when you either in meditation or going to sleep. Yes, Martine.
Yes, I would like it was, oh, sorry, do you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can.
It was one of my question is about sleep. When you go to sleep, you have to withdraw the consciousness to the head.
Mm-hmm.
And that normally, if I remember well, DK says to remain conscious and passing into not sleep, but I don't know how to do it, in fact.
Yes,
because,
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I've tried the same technique for years and I haven't got anywhere. No.
Okay. Thank you.
I've just drifted. Although there are times though when I think that I'm not asleep, but yet I know that yes, but I'm conscious. So I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Kim.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know if this is relevant, but I remember when I was little and then it just stopped and I don't even know when it stopped. But every night when I went to bed, I used to, and nobody told me to do this, I just did this.
Yeah.
I used to put my attention in, what I now know is more like the Ajna center.
Yes.
And I would go in from there somewhere, I'm not quite sure where. And I would immediately find myself floating in the universe inside a dodecahedron,
right?
Which is, sacred geometry shape.
Yes, yes.
And it was my safe space. It was like I felt so peaceful, and I would float around, and I would see. I suppose it sort of felt like stars everywhere, and yeah, and I would do that every night. And then I don't know when I stopped doing it. Moment I was think about doing it.
Yeah, I suppose yes. When we are young, these things come naturally to us, and then we lose the ability. Okay. Questions on cremation. Do not touch the body after 24 hours. Well, DK doesn't give any advice about that, so we don't know. How long do we wait for cremation? Is there an esoteric reason why Michael's cremation was 14 days? We don't know why he was cremated 14 days after, but there's certainly no esoteric reason for it, because DK tells us here, on the next slide, if delay is necessary for family feeling or municipal requirements, cremation should be within 36 hours. And if there's no reason, then cremation can be permitted within 12 hours. But it is wise to wait for 12 hours at least to assure that true death has actually occurred. And I think DK is eager to make us understand that the quicker the physical vehicle is destroyed, whether it's cremation, whether it's the physical vehicle or the etheric, because if you remember on our previous webinar, we were saying how the cremation disperses, the etheric body. So the quicker then the hold is the hold of these bodies is broken on the withdrawing soul. So it's much, much better to do it as quickly for the person's sake. Cremation releases the etheric body in hours instead of days. However, when there is waiting time of 2 weeks, doesn't that waiting time negate the benefit? Well, it depends on the point of evolution of the individual. In the case of the undeveloped person, yes, the etheric body can linger for a while around the decaying body, but for the advanced person, in spite of the longer period, he's detached in his thinking, so the dissolution of his etheric body can be extremely rapid. So it really depends on the point of evolution of the individual here. Now, I would like to end, we've only got 2 more to go, friends, 2 more slides, I mean. I would like to end but before I end the session, is there any other sharing that you would like to do? Because then we will end with death and war, because we are surrounded with that current war.
I just have a question. So what happens if you do it less than 12 hours? What's the reasoning?
What DK was saying is that not what happens, well, unless the doctors have pronounced the person definitely dead, but there are, although it's a little bit, I don't know whether I should go into that now, but anyway, very, very briefly, there are 2 minor chakras called the lung chakras. They are the last ones to shut off, and the soul may retain, that's how the soul retains its grip on the body. So that's why DK says 12 hours at least, so that then definitely the energy is released, or withdrawn rather, from these 2 minor chakras, the lung chakras. That's all, just to make sure that death has actually occurred.
Chat.
Okay, lastly, seeing that we're surrounded with a Ukraine and Russian war, I wanted to share that with you so that we can understand a little bit of what's going on. Death.
I don't know.
Yes, Victor.
I have a question more than anything. What about organ donation?
Just gonna start again.
Shouldn't matter.
Share chat. This is chat, but there's no.
What's happening?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, once the person has passed away, well, before the destructive elementals start on their work, that organ can safely be transferred. So that's okay. I don't see any problem there, or even though DK doesn't say anything about the transference of organs, but many people have lived very good lives after they've been donated either a kidney or a lung or a heart. It's only an organ, don't forget, it's only physical. So there shouldn't be any problem there.
Chris, do you want to speak? You have opened your mic.
Yes, thank you so much for noticing that. I couldn't see where the hand raising thing is. But anyway, I posted in the chat a little earlier on a video which I think is critical for all of us who are interested in this topic. It is Yeshe Tsogyal's writing of what Padmasambhava taught about what you experience when you go through the Bardos, step by step. So, there's the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but then there is this, and it's a beautiful video. There's nothing to watch, so it's perfect to close your eyes and just listen. And the woman who is slowly, wonderfully reading what Padmasambhava said about what you will experience in the Bardos, and how by being prepared, you can reach enlightenment at the time of your death. You need to go past the astral world, like all those lower levels that we're saying that ordinary people go through. You want to go past the mental body. You want to go past all that. And he explains what you will see, what you will experience, so that you are prepared and you can reach that state, that ultimate state. So I just wanted to point that out, that I wrote that, in the chat, that YouTube link, and that everyone should watch it, listen to it. Padmasambhava says 3 times. We all say the hearing is the last to go. If you just would read this or have the person listen to this, this would help.
Okay.
Anyway, so
thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
That's great. Thank you.
I shared it again in the chat for everyone if you want to grab it.
Okay. All right, friends, let's have a look at death and war now. DK tells us that death, through the destructive processes of war, is under the directive and cyclic intention of the planetary Logos, working through the council chamber at Shambhala. The beings who live there know that a time has come when the relation between planetary evil and the forces of light and of good have reached a point of explosive antagonism. This must be given free rein if the divine purpose is to work out unarrested. The explosion is therefore permitted, nevertheless, and there's the interesting thing here. All the time, a controlling factor is present, even though unrealized by men. In other words, hierarchy is keeping an eye on it. So obviously they know the purpose of that war and how and the effect of the war is on many levels. It's the limited vision of those identified with form who so consistently nurtured the fear of death. The cycle that we are now living in has seen the greatest destruction of human forms in the entire history of our planet. There has been no destruction of human beings. I would have you note this statement. And the result is humanity has made a very rapid advance towards a more serene attitude in connection with death. This is not apparent yet, but in a few years' time, the new attitude will begin to be marked and the fear of death will begin to die out in the world. This will also be largely due to the increased sensitivity of the human response apparatus, leading to a turning inwards and to the new orientation of the human mind, with unpredictable results. The basis of all wars is fundamentally the sense of separateness. This fundamental individualism or pleased recognition of isolationism leads to all the secondary causes of war: greed, producing economic disaster; hatred, producing national and international friction; cruelty, producing pain and death. This is why war is not murder, as many well-meaning fanatics consider it. It's the destruction of forms with a beneficent intent of the planetary Logos. However, it is the motives of the originators of war on the physical plane which make them evil. If war did not take place, the planetary life would, through what we call acts of God, call back the souls of men on a large scale in line with his loving intention. When evil men precipitate a war, he brings good out of evil. Death appears frequently to be so purposeless, and this is because the intention of the soul is not known. Now, regarding Russia, I would really recommend that we read Problems of Humanity. There's a whole section on Russia. And I've just pulled out the main points here. Russia must not, with ambition and design, seek to sweep the small powers into her arena of activity against their wishes or through undue pressure and force. Russia has still much to do with the immense territories and their inhabitants, which are already within her sphere of influence. The other nations must also work out their own destiny and must not rule perforce by Russia. The other nations, meaning all those who were under Russian rule. That great nation, a synthesis of East and West, must learn to rule without cruelty and without infringing the free will of the individual. And because she has complete confidence in the beneficence of the ideals which she is developing, but which are not yet expressed. I will leave you with that thought, friends, because there's a lot of good that has come out of that war. It has strengthened many people from many angles. But I will leave you with these thoughts for you to think about and to ponder. So thank you very much for your contribution, your sharing. I'm sure that it's a comfort for a lot of us hearing the different experiences that you've shared with us. I know that we've really gone beyond, but obviously there was a need for it, seeing that you shared so much with us. So thank you, friends, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.